Welcome to the Honest Business Podcast. This is the show for ambitious, value-driven business owners who are actively building a business that works for them. Hi, I'm May James, and I'm here to make scaling your business easier and more rewarding than ever. Each week, we will dive into simple, sustainable strategy and pragmatic leadership discussion to support you as you take imperfect action on your entrepreneurial journey. If you want to stay ahead, exceed your growth goals, and have a purposeful, thriving business, then keep on listening. Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. So excited to have you today. Excited for this episode. Hope you are well. I hope your business is good. I hope you are having a lovely summer break or summertime if you are not taking a break right now. And today's episode is a bit of a different one that we normally do. I am actually going to be answering some questions. So this is almost like a Q&A. There's no one here to ask the questions, but these are questions and we are going to go through 10. I picked out 10 questions, and these are questions, some of them people have directly asked me, some are things that people ask me day to day, and then some are we put a Q&A box up and people put things in. So if you like this kind of episode, please do let me know, because I think this is something we could bring back as a somewhat regular feature / setup, because people seem to have quite a lot of questions, which is amazing, and I'm very much happy to answer them, and I will answer them as honestly as I can. So yeah, we'll rattle through them and hopefully it won't be too long, but I hope in this you will find some useful nuggets potentially. So the first question is, drumroll please, do your family support you? This is such an interesting question and such a nice question, and the simple answer is yes. Yes, they do. Have they always? I suppose yes, they have. Has it always been easy for people to see the vision and where we're going? Not really. I don't think people really get it a lot of the time. Not that that's anyone's fault or that it's bad that they don't. It's just, it's hard, and many people will relate to that if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever. And yeah, my family do support me. I have family who actually physically support me in the business, who work for me in various capacities. So that's always a plus, they support me in that way. But what I would say, because I've always been thinking about what did the person mean when they asked that, or why were they asking that, is yes, they do support me, but it's also not a case of like I have this endless support and endless thing of people cheering me on, because that isn't really the case, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just wanted to be honest with you of like, I am not in a family of like entrepreneurs. I'm not really in a family of people, kind of lost my biggest cheerleader and my best friend last year, and if you've listened to the podcast you'll understand this, but I lost my mum last year, and we were best friends, and I never regret that one bit. And I know that's a whole other topic we could go into, but if anybody is a mother and worries and has people who say don't be best friends with your kids because it's really bad, like, I don't believe that. Even though I've lost mine and I don't have her anymore, I'm never going to have her back, I would never regret it and never change anything. And yeah, so I've lost my kind of biggest cheerleader, which has been hard. Well, not my biggest, sorry. My partner, he really helps me and really cheers me on. This got deep really quickly, didn't it? Oh my goodness. Told you it was going to be honest. But what I'm saying with that answer is like, yes, they do support me, but I also don't want you to think that it's just like every day everyone's like, woo, amazing. Like, it's really not. And also people don't really get what I do. Because it's not like you're an accountant or you're this or you're that. People don't really kind of understand it. So, maybe like more older members of my family are like, okay, whatever, I don't really get what she does. So, it's just a strange thing. So I obviously could not say no, they don't, and they do support me. But I also don't, like, it's not like they're like fully on board with the vision, understand where we're going, understand the mission. Like, my other half does to quite a strong degree. But even still, he doesn't fully get it. So, yeah. That's my answer to number 1. I'll try not to ramble. Number 2 is, this is such a good one. Who is May James, the business, a dream client? And then they've put, what do they like? What do they like? What do they do? So this is really cool. So, my dream client, if you want to call it that, is people who are very driven and very clear on like who they are. I'm not saying like they have to know everything about themselves, but what I mean is like they're very clear on who they are. They have a goal in mind and they just need help to get there. They want a guide, they want a clear path, they want someone who understands what it's like to live in the real world and to come up with all the challenges that go on of being a woman and being in business and being a mother or being this. And obviously I'm not a mother and I'm not a load of other things, but in terms of someone who has understood the world and has in some degree been through so much stuff in her life that she understands what it's like to sometimes have a real crap time, that's kind of where I come in. You know, our dream clients are making a lot of money in some people's eyes. They have a business that works in some respect, like their model works, or what they're doing is really working, but they really want to optimize, or they want to grow. So optimization and growth are two really key areas for me in the work that I do, in the sense of when I'm really at my optimum peak. And I think this is something that it's partly my fault in the business that this has not been clear, because my work all the time, I don't do that. And that's something I've chosen, you know, like I appreciate that not everyone's at that point and it's like a journey. And so, you know, if you're talking to me about who is the real dream client, then that is the honest answer of I do my best work and I'm most useful to a business and I'm most exceptional when I'm helping with scaling problems, team, growth, mapping out long term. I can get people to see things that they can't see for themselves. I can plan for them. You know, they can have something they want and I can give them the roadblock step by step of like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do whatever. I can help people see further than they can see and really collapse the time in that respect. And so in order for me to be able to do that work, I then need to be able to come into a business that's set up in a way for me to be able to do that. So typically, you know, people are making 20 grand at least, 30 grand a month. And that is where the real kind of payoff from my perspective and my expertise comes in. If you're hiring me for like a consultant advisory role, because I really can come in and push the business in that, you know, growth direction. So yeah, that is like what they're like and what they do. And in terms of what they do, you know, I really love helping B2B businesses. I can support direct-to-consumer businesses and, you know, I have clients and I really enjoy that. But in terms of if it's direct-to-consumer, I think direct-to-consumer, I do prefer working with service-based businesses. And, you know, B2B tend to be a lot of service-based businesses anyway. But yeah, I mean, the May James dream client is like she's a woman. She's a woman who knows what she wants. Not like she doesn't have to know everything she wants, but like she knows the lifestyle she wants. She knows what her values are. That's really important. She knows what she stands for and what she doesn't. And she's grown into that, you know. I'm not saying everyone has to have this like sorted off the cuff, because that just doesn't really work. Like, it's all about a growth and a journey. But I really love supporting women, a diverse group of women as well. You know, I work with people across the board of different places around the world, different setups, different backgrounds and things, and that's really important to me. I really love that. But I really do my best work when people are in a growth phase and are in a point where they're like, right, we really want to go for this and we really want to partner with someone who gets this and gets the vision. This is the other thing, I think. For me, like, the ideal dream client for us is someone who really wants, it's almost like, not that they want a business partner, because that's not right, it's not the right terminology, but they want someone who will meet them at that level, you know? Like, it's like someone who, they might only see me, you know, once a month or twice a month or 3 times a month or however long, you know, whatever they want to see me, but they're like really solid on it. Like, they see the relationship as like, they can trust me. I think that's what we're coming down to, you know? It's this trust element of, wow, I can trust this woman. She really loves our business. She really cares for it. She genuinely is interested. And that is hard to find. It sounds very simple, and it's like, well, surely every business coach, consultant, advisor is like that. And they're not. Like, they're really not. They'll tell you they are, but like, you know, they just aren't. And so for me, it's about who is a lovely person, who is a good person. I only want to work with good people. Good human beings who have a big heart and who care for the community around them and who care for people and love deeply. That for me is an ideal dream client at May James, and it's who that I love to work with. And often, this doesn't have to be a dream client, but a lot of them are quite family orientated, or if not family orientated, community orientated. So it's not like people are like obsessed with their families or have these huge massive families. That's not what I'm saying, but they tend to have quite like close-knit relationships, or like having close-knit relationships. A lot of our clients don't have like tons and tons of friends and have like endless social life. I mean, they can do, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of dream client, if we have to pin it to one person, they tend to be very kind of close-knit and very kind of insular, but in a good way, and in a very self-deprecating is the right word, but just very interesting way. And also a lot of our clients have been through a lot in their lives. I'd also say that. So, and it's actually, there's a theme that runs pretty much through everyone of people have had adversity in their life, or they've had some kind of major thing in their life, or they've been through a lot to get to where they are. And that stands for so much. People's journeys are so, so important, and people's experiences of life to that point, up until that point, and what they're going through at the time is really key. And having someone who can hold space for that is really important, and that's something that I'm very lucky in being able to do, and I really value highly. And I think because I've been through such a hell of a lot in my life as well, it really is a beautiful partnership and can really bring a lot to a relationship together. So that is like another interesting thing. I love that question though, very interesting. Question number 3 is, what do business owners who are scaling need to focus on? Such a good question. So the 2, I could have picked anything, so many answers for this, but I'm going to go with 2 answers and they're linked. So if you are scaling your business, and whether that means for you, you're scaling from like $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month, or you're scaling from $20,000 to $100,000 a month, or you're scaling from 100 to $1 million a month, let's just say that. The 2 key things are emotional intelligence and decision-making process skills. Well, decision-making skills / process / actually doing it. Those are the 2 things that are like some of the biggest, and they're also the 2 that shift the most at each of those points. So, emotional intelligence is something that we build, it's something that we work on, we build up throughout our lifetime. And that really aids our decision-making process and our decision-making ability. Aside from that, the decision-making skill is something that we really develop as business owners, and that is something that you have to get really good at. And I believe that work has to come from you. It really has to come from you as the CEO, the leader, the founder, the business owner, whatever you want to call yourself. That has to come from the CEO. I'm going to go with CEO from that terminology, but insert whatever terminology fits for you. As a CEO, we've really got to kind of shift the decision-making process a lot. It might go from being you make every decision to start not making every decision and allowing someone else to make a decision. It might be that you've got used to, maybe you're at the like 50k a month mark, and you've got where like 2 or 3 people are making decisions for you quite freely. It's like a senior leadership situation, and you're there just overseeing it. But that next part of the decision-making process journey might be for allowing non-senior leadership members to make that decision. And that can become extremely scary for people, because it's almost like you're going on this whole journey again. And so at each step of that scaling trajectory, you're dealing with your decision-making process and how quick you can do it, and how well you can do it, and how thought out and methodical you can do it. But then also, what is the emotional intelligence involved? What is that piece? How are you developing those things? What's your grit and resilience like? Like, how are you repeatedly working on that? That's the bit that is really the difference, I think, between people who scale well and people who just scale. Because you can scale a business. That's, in some respects, not even the problem. The problem is, who are you becoming, and who can you be as an individual? Number 4, what keeps you up at night? Oh, this is a funny question. I find this funny. What keeps me up at night? The person who asked me this maybe knows that I have insomnia. I don't know. But for those of you who don't know, I have insomnia. It comes and haunts me at various different times. Sometimes it's that I can fall asleep and then it wakes me up at 2 a.m. Other times is that I can't fall asleep at all. Sometimes I just don't sleep very well because I'm in a really crap pattern, and that's not the insomnia's fault, it's just mine. So there's various different reasons. But in terms of what keeps you up at night and what I think they mean from that of like the longer term, not the longer term, but the more like wider thing of that, of like what worries you, I suppose maybe is the question. What keeps me up at night? Also, I meant to say I haven't prepared the answers for these. Yeah, I meant to say that at the beginning of the episode. I have got these questions, but I haven't actually gone through and prepared the answers, so this is very like off the cuff and honest. What keeps me up at night? Not reaching my potential is something that really winds me up, and that's probably why I work a lot, because I am like constantly like, right, like where are we going? Are we getting there? You know, etc. thing. Other things keep me up at night, basic things like if there's things on my to-do list that I'm just like, oh, I really want to get that done, I should have had that done, that will keep me up. And to the point where I'm now in a position where I just choose to get up and do things sometimes. If it's some like niggly thing, I'm like, come on mate, just do it. Or I'll purposely I structure and end my day in a way that allows for that not to be a thing, so that I can avoid that. The other thing that keeps me up at night is having this internal battle with myself of how big do you go, and how many businesses do you have, and how many things do you go after. As someone who I would consider myself an entrepreneur in the sense of I have a very entrepreneurial brain, and so at least once a day I have a business idea that I really want to execute and really think's good, and will write various pieces of business plans for, and then I have to say to myself no, and I let myself explore the idea, and I let myself write the plan, but I don't actually execute because I know that that's not the answer. But sometimes I can lie in bed and I can be thinking, oh, I really want to do this, I really want to do that, and I have a screensaver on my computer that says you can do anything but not everything. And that's something that's really important to me, because you totally can do anything in this world that you want to do, but you can't do it all. And for me, I've really had to hone that in as someone who is like a multi-passionate, if you want to call it, individual, and someone who has so many thoughts and ideas and things that they want to do in their life. So yeah, that's what keeps me up at night. But maybe ask me again in 6 months and I'll tell you if it's the same. The next question, number 5. How are you navigating social media at the moment with so many changes? So this is interesting. Can you hear my stomach rumbling? I don't know if you can. So sorry if you can. I'm starving. Really hungry. How are we navigating social media at the moment? So, I mean, I am just going with it. Like, go with it. I don't get why everyone's so resistant to change. Like, the whole idea of being a business owner and being an entrepreneur is about change and being flexible and agile and moving. So if you're going to sit and twist, there's no point. You might as well just not do anything. So coincidentally, we're at a point in the business where we're going through so many changes internally anyway that I've kind of pulled back on some aspects of social, and our marketing has decreased somewhat because of various things, which is a different episode we can go into. But we, have started exploring different platforms more, and that's really exciting. There are more in the pipeline, but again, I'm very methodical and strategic, and so it's not a case for me to just go, right, let's just go over to this platform and dump everything on there. Like, that's not how it works. So for us, it's very like long-term, thought out. What are we going to do? How do I want it to be? How do we differentiate platforms? A lot goes into that for me. But in terms of how we're navigating it, I'm just seeing it as like, cool, like it's a challenge, it's a change. I like change. I think, it's important. Do I think Instagram are being ridiculous? Yeah. Like, do I think it's annoying? Yeah. Have I seen a massive change in engagement? Yeah. Have I still made money and still make money via Instagram? Yes. Will I still continue to use it? Yes. Will I continue to create, I call it like content first for a platform, as in like, will I still create content purely from a non-repurposed perspective from Instagram? I don't know, we'll see. I think it's going to become, I still always do stories, because stories is my place. If you don't follow me on Instagram, please come follow me. If you like this podcast, you'll enjoy my stories. I pretty much vlog my life, I suppose you could call it, every day, and I really share with you the honest side of business. And it's also how I sell a lot through stories, and that probably won't ever change. But in terms of the grid and stuff, I mean, I'm not convinced how much we are going to create, content first for that platform. A lot of it will become repurposed, and that's kind of cool. I think until Instagram sorts itself out, then that's how we're going to roll. And I'm very happy to change that, and I'm very happy to go back on my word, when it is in a more stable position. But I think the problem with it at the minute is it doesn't even know itself what it's doing. So I think being flexible, being really open is really key. And, you know, that's business. I think that's what's really fascinating to me, seeing the people who are leaning into this and seeing who aren't. Like, if you're not just accepting what's going on and, like, moving with it, then I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's business. You can't expect things to stay the same all the time. I always still come back to this idea, and I know people disagree on this, but for me, I'm like, it's such a gift that we have social media and that it's free, and, you know, there's so much advertising you can now do organically that we never would have had years and years ago. So I often see it as like, it's still a gift, even if it's not converting at the same rate, or it's not doing this, or it's not doing that, or like you're not growing. Like, let's face it, Instagram, I've not grown in like, I don't know, over a year. I might even have less than I did a year ago. I don't even know. We removed people, so potentially. But, you know, it doesn't really bother me. Like, I'm not interested in the numbers. I'm interested in the numbers of my business. So, like, that's the big difference. It's like, to me, the numbers on social mean not that much in comparison to, like, well, what is the business actually doing? And what is the impact we're making doing? And that's really important to me. Obviously, we have the podcast, which has been interesting, that I really enjoy doing. But yeah, I mean, social media is interesting at the moment. I'm currently recording this in July of 2022, but God knows what's going to happen between now and the end of the year, and we'll just keep going. But I think for me, it's about always understanding that strategy will always win, and strategy always is key. So it doesn't matter what platform we're using, it's about how do we create a strategy for that platform that makes sense, and how to create a strategy overall that's a marketing strategy. It's not a social media strategy, and that's a key difference. You don't have to just focus on social media strategy, because that's not necessarily the right way of going about it. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's pushing people to be more intentional about what they're doing and really kind of shifting. Can I see Instagram completely falling off the face of the earth? I mean, yeah, nothing's kind of impossible at this point. I think, why not? But I also don't think TikTok's the be all and end all. I think there's space and time for both and all the other platforms that exist. So it's very interesting. Number 6, just taking a breather. Sometimes I get so excited that when I'm talking to you that I just forget to breathe, and you might be able to hear, you might be like me, it's awful to listen to, but just having a breather. These questions are really interesting. So number 6 is biggest mistake of entrepreneurs at the 300 grand a year mark. Interesting. Yeah, let me think. Biggest mistake of entrepreneurs. Okay, so I think at the 300 grand mark, I'm going to go even from like 300 to the 800 grand a year mark, that ball game. So let's just say, I don't know, what's that, like 25k months to 70k months, something like that. I don't know, 60k months, that kind of realm. I would say the biggest thing is people holding on to people for far too long. So people not getting rid of people quick enough, i.e. hiring people, hiring team members, whether that's freelance, contracted, internally, you know, whatever team setup you're having. People will hold on to people. They don't want to get rid of them. And I spend quite a bit of time telling people to get rid of people. Not in a bad way, but if people are underperforming, if they aren't right for the role, they're not this, they're not that. And sometimes that's the fault of the entrepreneur and employer. Like, that's not, I'm not saying it's always the employee. Then sometimes people need to go. Obviously, you have to do it right and you have to do it legally. And there's various bits and pieces depending on where you are in the world. But I think people on the whole really hold on to people because they're often dependent on it, right? This stage, when you get at that stage of a business, the growth, I mean, it's the Wild West of where you're going. So, like, I totally get why people are in that predicament, but if you want to know the biggest mistake, that is the biggest mistake. People hold on for too long. They make excuses for people. They say it's going to work. They say it's going to fix. They're going to give them an extra month. They're going to do this with them. Like, and we get to a point where I can kind of tell pretty quickly whether or not it's going to work. And most of the time, well, nearly all the time, I'm right with that one. The other thing would be poor decision making, which I suppose we kind of touched on in the other question. But yeah, decision making, like that kind of mark, 300 to 800 grand a year, there's some really shady, bizarre decision making going on. Again, not intentionally. It's not that people mean to do it. It's because they're under a lot of stress. They are, you know, really pushing often at the seams of like various different things and managing a lot. And it can just, you know, the decision making falls short, which is often why people hire me to help them, because I can help them with their decision making and make sure we make good decisions. It's really important. And also, I know this question only asks for a biggest mistake, but there's something else that's popped into my head. Leadership, lack of leadership skills, and just lack of leadership in general. That is a big one as well, which again is something that I help people with all day long, and that's why people come and work with me, because if you are at that point of business, the lack of leadership is huge, and even beyond that, massively, all the things I've just mentioned there obviously apply to people at the 7-figure mark, but in terms of the biggest mistake, that's why I mentioned that kind of revenue, 300 to 800 grand a year kind of catch-all. But yeah, lack of leadership is a big one, and that can really lead to some difficult things. And all of those that I've mentioned all connect to each other, right? So lack of leadership, poor decision making, getting rid of people, team, hiring issues, that is all so intertwined and interlinked. That all makes sense as to why that's the biggest problem, or it does in my head anyway. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Number 7. Take a breather again, May. Let's remember. So, number 7. How do you recover from setbacks? This is a great question. I tend to let myself breathe and let myself rest, because I often need to process. And because I'm someone who cares really deeply, and because I really want to make everything right and be right all the time in terms of like doing the best thing for people and being a good person, that if I do have a setback, I often need time to just like internalize and to like stop. I often go quite inwards and just kind of chill for a bit, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just how I choose to be. And then there's also a process though of where I then just like get back into it, or back into the saddle, or whatever you want to say, and then really go for it. So it's kind of a 2-pronged approach with me. I really take time to reflect and kind of work out what the learnings were and why it's been a setback, or what hasn't happened, or what is missing. But then there's also an element of I can't sit and mope for too long, because if I just sit in reflection, I will never take action again. And I think some people think I'm some like ninja warrior when it comes to being able to take action, and that's not the case. It's just if I don't take action, I never will take any. And so for me, it's about constantly like discipline. Essentially, it's discipline of keeping going. And so if I have a setback, it's like, okay, well, let's get back on the discipline train of like, what are we doing every day, setting those habits up, really looking at habits, really looking at basics, and going back to core beliefs and core things that I want the business to be. But setbacks happen, mistakes happen, things can go wrong. And it's kind of just part of the journey. And I think when you get to a point in business where you learn to accept that, and you learn to feel really good about it, and just like, not good about it, but like, I don't know, you just become like, I don't want to say immune either, because you don't become immune, it still hurts, but it's just, you become very calm, and you know that reflection and time out and stepping away from like business in general is really important and can really help you like reframe stuff. I often just try and find the lesson though, because there's always a lesson in it for me. Like whenever there's a setback, there tends to be a massive like, that makes sense, or that's been what the business been trying to tell me for ages, but I just wasn't listening. Like so much in that you can kind of get from it. Number 8 is, how big is your inner circle? And they've put like friendship group, support system, etc. Very interesting. So my inner circle, I was going to say, is very inner. It's very small. Yeah, it's very small. I have a small group of people who really know me deeply. I have many people who don't really know me very well. And yeah, the people that are in my circle are very much in my circle and mean the world to me. And because of various things in my life, it means that I've kind of had to make it that way in terms of my health and in terms of, well, other things. I've lost one of my biggest support kind of system people. But yeah, my inner circle is very small, mostly family, if not exclusively family. Yeah, I don't have the energy, sadly, to be a hugely sociable person, so I have to really pick wisely. And again, that sounds very like wanky, I suppose, but it just is what it is. You know, building a business is hard enough, but then also the other things I have to deal with, it just doesn't really work any other way. But it's also fine, and I found peace with that. And, you know, I'd love to be more sociable, and I'd love to have X, Y, and Z thing going on, but then, like, that's just not in my path right now. And one day it might be, and that's okay, and that'll be fun and great if that does come along. But for now, my inner circle is very small, and kind of makes me happy. And I think it's important to mention as well, I'm an introvert. A lot of people think I'm an extrovert, and I'm probably, like, I always say I'm like one of the most introverted extroverts, which is also a theme that me and my clients often have. Not all of them, you know, everyone's different, but I like my own time and space, and I don't mind being on my own. You know, the path that I've chosen to go on in terms of, like, my business and what I build and, like, how we build it and the values and stuff I align to, it kind of lends itself well to being on your own and just kind of being really insular to some degree. My job in itself is very social, in the sense of, like, I talk to people all day for a living, and that's cool and that's great, and I love that, and I get a lot of communication from that. And so I often quite like just chilling out and being on my own, or just with very close people around me. That really means the world to me, and those key people in my life are my everything, sort of thing, and that's really huge. It's also one of the reasons I've really had such a hard time because of things that happened last year, because it really, you know, has torn me apart. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. Number 9, 2 questions left. Hope you've enjoyed this different format. Number 9 is what to do when someone says you're too expensive. Oh, I like this question. I'm assuming this means, like, in business. I think that's what they mean, like, in terms of, you know, your offer's too expensive. I mean, it doesn't really bother me anymore. Like, it doesn't invoke any emotion in me anymore, which, you know, has taken some time to get there. I'm just like, okay, fine, cool, they're not for me. My pricing is not really up for discussion in any way, shape or form. It is what it is. It's set in a way that is what it is. It can't, you know, one of my team members was like, well, it can't really be anything else, can it? In terms of it can't be any lower. And so I feel really confident about it. I feel really good. You know, for some people I charge a lot, and for other people they think I charge very little in comparison to what I provide and, you know, how good it is. That's always going to be up for discussion of, you know, it swings and roundabouts of who wants to feel what thing about pricing. So yeah, when someone, like, what to do when someone says you're too expensive, for me, I move on to the next sale, because I always just believe there's more money in the world, there's more sales, there's more people to help, there's people who need me, there's people who want me. And, you know, I would argue that some of the best clients that I've worked with are people who have, like, just been like, yeah, great, send me the invoice, great. They're not, you know, my ideal client are not the people who are, like, scrimping around trying to find the cheapest person, because I'll openly tell people I ain't the cheapest person. I do not get on the phone with people unless they know how much I cost. That's purposeful. I don't have time to waste. I'm not into it. Like, and that's not being rude. I just, you know, I don't have the time. So, you know, I don't often get on the phone and do, like, a sales call, but if I did, they have to know off the bat, like, this is how much this is how much that is. I put pricing on things now, marketing, like, I'm very open about it. In terms of you, the listener, what to do when someone says you're too expensive, we have an episode coming out about this, which is very interesting to listen to, but it's not 100% on sales objections. But I mean, there's lots you can do. You can work out, are they even the right fit? Often the people that are saying you're too expensive are not the right fit. Also, the people that are saying it's too expensive are probably not in the right headspace themselves. I mean, there's so many different things that come into this. Definitely go and listen to the episode. I think it's episode 20. So if it hasn't come out yet. No, I think it will have done. It's episode 20. So yeah, what I say when they're too expensive, I mean, I don't really say much. It's like, okay, no problem, great. Like, I'll reach out when I have something that is in your budget. You can ask them what is your budget. I wouldn't necessarily ask people what their budget is before doing that, but you can, you know, it's really important that you set your business up in a way that you're not having these discussions a lot of the time, I argue. So, like, have an application process or being really open in your pricing prevents a lot of that, like, recurring up, especially if it makes you feel really bad and it impacts on your mindset and the action you take. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And I just am very much of the opinion of like, some people are going to be able to afford you and some people aren't. And that changes, and the same person can not afford you and afford you in the same year, month, week, you know? I think people put far too much emphasis on like, this person can't afford me and therefore they're not going to work with me ever. That's not the case. People will come back to you time and time again. We see it happen. And that's, fine. The other thing is that we're not in a position to judge people. Like, it's not our responsibility to judge whether or not someone can afford it without them telling us. And when they do tell us, that's totally cool too. It's about keeping the door open and being really kind of understanding to them about what's going on in their life and where they're at. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, it doesn't really bother me. I'm just like, okay, that's fine. Like, I think I will never ever like prove my worth, because if I work with someone who I've got to prove my worth with, I mean, it would just be a disaster. I'm not into proving my worth in the sense of like telling someone how to. Obviously, through the work we do and the things in that relationship that unfolds. But what I mean is from a perspective of they haven't even signed up and they're questioning that, it's an immediate red flag for me, and it's just not something I want to get into. But that's just how I choose to run my business. Obviously, make sure from a market perspective that especially if you're like a product-based business, are you fitting in with your market and does it make sense for a consumer? Number 10, we're on to the final question. Oh, I've just read it. This is a juicy one. I didn't actually read these questions. As I said, I didn't really prepare them either. But I've just looked and glanced at it. I'm like, oh, this is a good one. So number 10 is, what do you do when clients aren't seeing results? I love this question. This is such a good question. Maybe we should do a whole episode on this, because this is a good question. Right. What do you do when clients aren't seeing results? There are so many reasons why clients may not see results, and therefore there are so many avenues to go down as to what do I do when that's happening. However, what I want to say is clients not seeing results is somewhat normal in the sense of things take time. So sometimes people are very impatient, sometimes people just expect things to change overnight. And so they will then see it themselves and internalize themselves as they're not seeing results. That's often a different conversation to have. So often I'm having a conversation of working out, well, how do they feel versus how do I perceive the situation to be? Because they are two different things. And typically the client will feel like they're not seeing results before I do, in the sense of if it's around like failure or not, like stuff not happening quick enough, which often if you're helping people with like building their business can be. If they're not seeing results like in any way, shape or form, because like they're not actually doing any of the work, I tell them. So for me, and this is an interesting question because for me, this doesn't really happen a lot in terms of clients aren't seeing results. I can really speak from an informed place, from an idea that people are not seeing them as fast as they want, because for me a lot of the work I do it requires them to actually sit and do it for a long period of time, and people don't want to do that. So that's where I can really speak from. In terms of like, if this question means what do you do when they aren't seeing results and you're literally giving them everything you've got and you don't know what to do next, I can't hugely tell you, because that doesn't really happen an awful lot for us. In terms of what I can say is that you have to be very forthcoming, very straight to the point, very directional with people, give people homework, give people to-dos, follow up with them, really like up your end of the support system. If people aren't seeing results, one of the biggest things I do is really tune in and dial down on what do they need from me. If they're really struggling, we will look at Voxer support and how, like, do we need to do an intervention in that sense, checking on what's going on. But for me, like, I try and, products and services set up in a way to avoid this ever really happening. But clients don't see results all the time, especially as you build out, if you're going to build out group things, that becomes really difficult to manage in terms of managing the actual success and the results, because it requires a self-dependency element of like them actually doing the work, which can be challenging. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole plethora of things I do, and we can do a whole podcast episode if that is of interest, because it's something that I think people get very scared of as facilitators. If you give a service to someone and you're saying they're going to get a result, they panic when people aren't. But, you know, you've got to hold your nerve. You've got to learn to understand your craft. I think that's the other thing for me is like, it doesn't really worry me because I feel very confident in what we offer and what I'm saying to people is possible. And I don't really give people timelines of like, by this point we will be able to achieve X, because I can't tell them that. And neither can you. And there's a lot of things in business that you can't actually give people a solid time frame on. And so that's another question to ask yourself of like, are you actually overpromising in the first place? Like, you don't have to overpromise in order to have a successful business, in order to have customers who are really happy. But clients who aren't seeing results, there's also a self-responsibility element as well. So you have to take responsibility and know when to call the shots and know when to say like, hey, this isn't working. And if you know deep down it's not working because you're not a good fit for each other and it's never going to work, then I would argue you need to be the one who says, this is not working, I want to end your contract, blah, 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 here's how it's going to work, etc., etc. Like, you have to take responsibility for where you're going and what you're doing and be really clear in your ethics of that. I am very solid on that. And, you know, if someone comes into the business and is a client and we're not a good match fit or we're not a good fit, and I know from the off, like I can tell pretty quickly if I can't help someone, then it's my responsibility to be like, this isn't going to work. I'm really sorry that we've gotten to this point, sort of thing, which again, doesn't really ever happen. I think the further you get into business, the easier this becomes of like making sure that you really qualify people that come into your business in terms of a sales perspective. But that is a key thing. You have to be clear on, are they not seeing results because you don't have the expertise or the knowledge to help them? Or are they not seeing results because it's a long process and takes time? Are they not seeing results because they're not actually doing the work? Are they not seeing results because, guess what, business is just bizarre and sometimes things just don't work for some reason? Are they not seeing results because you're in a global pandemic or a recession or a this or a that? Like, there are so many reasons, avenues, potential issues of why people aren't seeing results that you have to be so strong in your emotional intelligence, coming back to leadership, of like, you have to lead. And that's really where that question lies. It's like, where does your leadership come in of when people aren't seeing results? Because for me, it's about, can you lead? Can you lead from the front? Can you lead with confidence? If you can, you'll probably do very well if people are not seeing results. But if you can't, then you struggle. So that's my answer to that one. And, you know, don't feel like you're a bad person if they aren't seeing results. Like, there's so many reasons as to why. And often the other thing I say to people, if a client comes to me with this and says like, what do I do? Like, this person's not seeing results, is you never know the whole extent of what is going on. You're not in the room, you're not in their business 24/7, you're not in their life. So you can make assumptions and you can make guesses and you can listen to what they're saying, but you will never really fully understand what is going on because that isn't your job, you know? That's not your role. But that also means that you are only ever getting a certain percentage of the picture. And so you have to be very professional and you have to be very clear in your approach and also understand your role and your positioning and what your key thing you can offer is to them. And as long as you deliver on that, I think you can't really go wrong. It's about holding your kind of internal moral compass close to you and being a good person. I don't talk about being a good person, but like, it's really important in business. Just, you know, if you be a good person, it's really key. But I would say, from my perspective, in terms of my clients, I have to help. Part of my role when they're not seeing results is to get them clued into the vision and where they're going and to keep going with the action they're taking, because that's the biggest thing that's going to stop them. People will just stop when they're not seeing results, and I'm like, hey, we've only just started, you've got to keep going. People want to see results in like a week, 2 weeks, a month. Sometimes I need people to do things for like 6 months before they see the result, and that's mind blown for people. People are like, mate, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you know, people really struggle with that concept, but then if they do trust me and they do go for it, 6 months down the line, there's some mega things can have happened in their business. But for like 2 or 3 months of that, they could be thinking, why the hell am I paying me? Or like, oh, this is like touchy, or it's touch and go. And, you know, as I said before, I don't ever know what's actually going on in their heads. We have very frank and open conversations, and I will regularly bring up like a check-in point of like, how is this going? Are you enjoying working together? Blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I'm very aware that there's some points where people probably think, oh, like, this is so annoying and boring and like the same thing. she's getting me to do the same thing. I'm like, yeah, because it works. So it's very much about like you understanding and believing in what you do and being an expert. And I truly believe that I really know my stuff and I know my job, and so it doesn't hugely panic me or like worry me, because I'm just like, it's fine, like it'll get there. And it always does, you know. People always end up getting an outcome. Might not be the outcome that they want in terms of the to the extent that they would like it to be, but we always end up with something where people are like, oh, interesting, or it's a completely different outcome that they never actually expected or knew was possible, but they really enjoy it. And so it's a very interesting road to go down. But I would say that question and clients not seeing results comes from you really developing your craft and understanding. And that's not me saying that if people aren't seeing results that you're shit at what you do. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the process in which you approach this comes from a very different position. If though you're asking your question of what do you do when clients aren't seeing results, and it's like a course, that's when you really need to get some support, because that is something that can be fixed and often needs fixing and needs professionals. So for example, like hiring an educational strategist, which if you need one, go and check out Katie, the course coach, who is on most platforms and is amazing. She's called Katie Smith, and she is in the US. Hello, anyone listening in the US. She's in Vegas, and she's amazing, and that is who I have used to help me. But she's great, and that can be something, you know, if you've got a course or some kind of like learning thing that you're not actually teaching on, and normally it works when you teach it, but then you're doing it from a passive perspective or one-to-many perspective, then that is something you need to look at. Similarly, if you're doing like group stuff and you're just feeling like people aren't seeing results, it's often because you're probably approaching it from the same direction you're doing one-to-one stuff. One-to-one stuff in group is so different, the facilitation is different, the things you need to do is completely different, and so that is a whole other tangent itself. But basically I'm saying you have to learn your craft in different disciplines and different areas and have different tools, and that comes from experience and comes from you putting in the work and doing the stuff. So I'm gonna go. My laptop is dying, and so I really don't want to lose this episode for you, but I will speak to you very soon. Come and find me over on socials and say hi and tell me what you enjoyed about this episode, which question was the most interesting. Tag me on Instagram and I will speak to you soon. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Honest Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you are subscribed, and if you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others and leave a rating and review. To catch up with all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at may.james_, where I share the raw, uncut, behind the scenes reality of what running multiple businesses every day truly looks like. As always, links and any resources that were mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes below. That's all for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.